All right, we are live. Hey, everybody. I know it's been like a month, I think, since our last live Q&A. Um, and that is because the last one we were supposed to have was like 2 weeks ago, and I caught the plague from my daughter. Apparently, just having a 1-year-old means that you get sick every time she gets sick. Um, so I apologize for not sending an advance notice really to anybody. I was laid up in bed, so I didn't send out the email, and I wasn't able to give Zach like access to, um, the channel or anything like that. So I apologize for that. But we're back, and we have lots of news and questions. Zach, you're reporting from the UK. How are you doing?
Dude, I'm doing quite well, man. I actually had an opportunity to attend Cambridge University as a student, and I am back here for the first time in what I just figured out was more than 15 years. So it's pretty cool. Hopefully the noise isn't too loud in this coffee shop here, but excited to be rapping and chatting. And honestly, Joe, I think this is almost transitioning from just a Gutenberg Q&A to a Gutenberg news show in a way, because I think that there's some stuff like we want to talk about too that people might not have even known to ask about, but a lot of good questions for today. Excited to be back. Excited you got color back in your cheeks. Folks, it was for real. If you've had plagues wipe through your family, it's a real thing. So glad to have you back, buddy.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm glad to be back. It was rough business. It's like my daughter's like so jovial, even when she's sick, usually. So it's just like she's got like a stuffy nose, but she's like still running around. And I'm like, it's as if I got like shot with an arrow, like in the neck. I'm like, I just can't do anything. Um, but that's neither here nor there. Zach, you are right. We are we have lots of news to talk about. While I send out this tweet letting the greater Twitterverse knowing that we're live. So we have a bunch of news.
Oh yeah, do that. I gotta tweet that
out. We have a bunch of news before we get to. We have a good amount of questions too, so let's jump into it. The first thing is that WordPress 4.9.5 is out now, and there was a big rumor that a call to action would be in that version of WordPress to try Gutenberg. That got delayed because there were a few things that needed to be fixed in Gutenberg. So that is now coming out in 4.9.6 as far as we've seen, at least. So probably I would say my guess is towards the end of this month. I don't know if there's an official release date for 4.9.6 at this point. But I know that there's been a lot of, I know about this, but my clients don't know about this, or just general WordPress users don't know about Gutenberg. Well, that is about to change because it's going to be front and center, since this is a dot update, like a dot update. I don't know what that's officially called, a O update or whatever. It's a smaller security and maintenance update. It will get pushed out automatically, right? Those are the ones that WordPress does automatically. So this is going to get pushed out, and anybody using WordPress who's reasonably updated, at least on 4.9, will see this call to action. So I have a feeling that if you're a freelancer, you're going to be getting a lot more questions about what is Gutenberg, what is this editor, and things like that. So that's the first thing to point out. The second thing to point out is Gutenberg 2.6, the plugin 2.6 is out, and there are a lot of improvements. The big front end or UI improvements, before I'll pass over to Zach for the development, if there's anything of note there, is that we can now drag and drop blocks. So beforehand, you would have to essentially, use the up and down arrows to kind of move the blocks up and down very manually and time consumingly. Now you can just kind of drag the blocks up and down across a bunch. You can just grab it and drag it to where you want it to go. So that's a big update. The other big update is that the columns UI has gotten an improvement where the the column doesn't necessarily contain the the edit functions and stuff like that. So you don't see the issue that we were running into in 2.5 where you were having a hard time selecting where the text goes. So that's something to point out as well. There's a big improvement for the columns UI, and drag and drop has been added. Zach, is there anything of note on the developer front?
Yeah, so I could speak to that a little bit. First of all, very cool improvements. Definitely the UI refinements are coming. The drag and drop is huge. I haven't looked at it yet, but from a development, can you hear me okay? Is it better if I hold the mic here?
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
Okay, so what's exciting for me, and I haven't dug into this yet, is actually, does this mean that we now have fluid drag and drop API to use for our own stuff? Because what is being developed, and we'll come to this later in the show, but the sidebar API and then the full page takeover, some conventions. So we're not just like hacking into Gutenberg and then doing whack stuff in there, much as we can with the WordPress API, which has been tested and consistent. So the drag and drop is huge, and I have to dig in a bit more and see to what extent we could use that, because that would be great if you don't have to write any of that yourself. So that's pretty cool. The real big one was that they have removed the conditional checks for block toolbars and inspectors. So normally when you've been coding out in the past, if you were coding out something that appeared in the sidebar or something that appeared in a little toolbar, you have to say, hey, well, originally it was like props.focus, and then it was props.isSelected, and now they just removed it, and they're using the React Context API, which is pretty cool in a way of not having to pass data in the same way, allow awareness of context, basically. And so, of course, this was basically finalized after I had just did a complete redo of my 5-hour course. So luckily, it won't break, and you could still use isSelected, because there are times where you want your block to be aware within the block somewhere if somebody's clicking around or doing something, and you might want to change the UI slightly or something like that. So isSelected is still available and preferred, but it's not required. So the code examples won't break. Luckily, it doesn't do anything wrong, but that is a big change. Let me think. There's some other stuff going on. Like this is more UI, but I like it when you hover over a block now that's not selected. It tells you what kind of block it is, which just gives some nice stuff there. There is a move, and of course, if you don't know, like follow the. I don't think our chat lets us post links, but over at make.wordpress.org/core, there's a 2.6 update. So go check that out. And let me just see what else is in here. Allow extending autocompleters via filters. Haven't played with that too much. There is some move. I don't know if it was in this one or I think it's coming along, is discussion around is registration of blocks moving to server side, or is it going to stay on the client side? So I just want to talk about this for a quick moment, if that's all right. This isn't something that has had a big shift, and it hasn't been fully determined, but I want to give you the latest as of me kind of. So the benefits of server-side registration, right, are that then WordPress and its entire ecosystem knows about what blocks are present and what's available and what user permissions are and all of that stuff before anything ever hits the front end of the site. Right now, everything has to be managed in state and client side, be a little bit tricky and not allow for some of the locking down maybe or like deeper controlling of blocks, right? So it sounds like what's going to happen is server-side or client-side registration will continue to work and be a thing going forward, at least for the foreseeable. So it's that block register server-side, which exists already, may become required for certain types of blocks, like dynamic, or it may just be extended a little bit more. To do is set up some attributes, and you can't do everything that you can on the front. And there's also this question of, we have register block type cased function in JavaScript, and then we have register block type as a underscore lower case space or spelling function in PHP. There's this discussion like if you register your block with PHP, but script to it, are you calling the register block type function twice? And so there is discussion of like, does it make sense to have an extend block type function in JavaScript, where if you set everything up on the PHP, then you're calling something different and just adding a little bit more in. So that's just kind of an update there. I know for some folks, this is a really big thing. So that's an update. Let me see. Yeah, I'm going to come back to the sidebar that there was anything specific here with that. And like always, just check out the 2.6 update of everything that's going on there. But I think that might be pretty good. Just scrolling through here again. Yeah.
Yeah, and I dropped a link to the blog post. Every 2 weeks, it looks like the Gutenberg team over at make.wordpress.org/core does a What's New in Gutenberg. And that is usually tied to the bi-weekly release. So it'll highlight the big features, and then they'll give you a long list of all the things that have changed, with like GIFs or videos of things that are helpful. This one includes a video of the drag and drop feature. So thanks, Zach, for that. The other update that we have, the other piece of news, I guess, that we have is Atomic Blocks from, I believe it's Array Themes, right? Mike McAllister, is that, am I getting that name right? I was trying to find a name on the Array Themes site to confirm.
Yep, Mike McAllister, big fan. If you're out there listening, Mike, doing cool work, we see you.
Yeah, absolutely. He has released something called Atomic Blocks, which are a set of extra blocks for Gutenberg, as well as a theme for Gutenberg, like a Gutenberg ready theme. So I will drop that link in the chat as well. And if you're watching this post recording, we'll make sure to include those notes in the show description. But this looks really cool. It also looks really free right now. So if you just give your email address, you can give Atomic Blocks a spin. I think that's totally worth it. Looks really, really great. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm sure that YouTube videos will be coming from someone someplace in the near future.
Let me add to that, folks. We are way past this time of, hey, well, I think Gutenberg should be something different than it is, and it should have gone down this way. And we're also past the time of like, well, I'll just wait until it gets rolled out. Y'all, like, it's done. What this Atomic Blocks is doing, it is spot on, and you're about to miss your window if you want to be one of those early adopters out there, getting plugins, getting this stuff ready, getting in the repo, reserve your names, your plugins, that kind of stuff is already happening. So we're right here, and it's about to crash. Of course, there will be opportunities in the future, but if you want to be on this, go get it, y'all. It's the time.
Yeah, I just if I can just soapbox for like 2 seconds. There's a few folks on Twitter that I follow that have been hitting the anti-Gutenberg track like pretty hard. They're like, what Gutenberg should be if it's supposed to really solve problems. And first of all, I mean, try Gutenberg and see what you think and give feedback. Like, your complaints sent off into the Twitter ether are meaningless, right? It's like complaining about an elected official but then refusing to vote. Like, the opinion doesn't matter, because we have the opportunity to give feedback. And second is that I feel like those complaints don't try to understand the problem that the Gutenberg team is solving. So I would go in with an open mind if you're looking to try the new WordPress editor, right? We keep calling it Gutenberg. This is what WordPress is going to be in 5.0. Go in with an open mind. Don't just hate it because it's different, because we have a lot of that too. And see, the team is working so hard. And since January, when or December, when I first tried Gutenberg, it has evolved leaps and bounds. So, I'm just reading those tweets, and I don't want to like get into like a Twitter scrap with people, but that's just something that kind of rubs me the wrong way. Every time somebody complains on Twitter and they're going to move away from WordPress because of this, and let the Gutenberg team know what you're thinking, because they're very open. So That's just me soapboxing. Before we jump into, Zach, you wanna?
Oh man, I lost my thought. I was just gonna second what you're saying and also say, like, folks, do this within GitHub. Like, there are issues and there are discussions and there's discussions going on, and like there are opportunities. And this team is super responsive. I have really been amazed, and I've started to see folks on Twitter be like, "Hey, I submitted this bug," or like complain about what was the last one I saw was about a translation internationalization issue. He said 24 hours. They had a patch going for it. So that's rad. And this team cares, and there's human beings here. So like, let's do it like that. Again, just a soapbox, and I don't want to bash anybody. Like, we have opinions, and of course we could be opinionated, but if you want to be involved, like, there's a good opportunity to do that in a really positive way.
Right. It's not just a black box where, 4 people are making the decisions. It's a community driven thing. There was the accessibility news a few weeks ago that Gutenberg wasn't very accessible. And in just a couple of weeks, the team has turned that around and they're trying to make it as accessible as possible. So, it's a discussion. It's not a dictatorship. It's a democracy. Cool. So before we jump into the questions, we of course want to thank GiveWP for sponsoring these live Q&As. Go ahead and check them out at givewp.com. If you want to see their plugin in action, their free plugin, by the way, it's a free plugin. If you want to see that in action, you can go to gutenberg.courses/ask us and see the donation form. If you want to see the whole submission process, you can make a donation to the Joe and Zach Gutenberg show cause. And they've been very supportive. I saw on Twitter, I think yesterday, that they're putting out Gutenberg related stuff. Informational stuff. So they've been super supportive of this project and of us in general. And I can't say enough nice things about them.
Oh, then I will. Let me jump in on this bandwagon. Fans, just the plugin, but the people behind it, good people. Matt, Kevin, these folks have been involved. Like you said, a lot of information coming out from them, and it just shows like awareness of what's going on. Of course, be compatible, so you've got that going. And remember, just keep in mind when you're looking for donations, the solution: give WP. Just give. Yeah.
Give, and then the URL is GiveWP. That's right. I have a hard time with that.
Big fan. So shout out to y'all, and thanks for helping us do this show here. We're very grateful.
Yep. Absolutely. And then the last thing we want to just if you have a WordCamp or a meetup where you're giving a talk about Gutenberg and you want to offer folks a discount on our courses, get in touch. It's going to be 40% just for being a WordCamp or a meetup that talks about Gutenberg. We're here to help the community, and so we want to give a good discount for those folks that are paving the way to inform people about Gutenberg. So get in touch with us either at gutenberg.courses or on Twitter at jcasabona or Zach Gordon. Zach Gordon? Z Gordon.
Z Gordon.
Z Gordon, right. Man, oh man. Cool. So without further ado, let's get to the crux of the matter here. Let's talk about questions. So we have a few questions in the chat that are somewhat related to the questions that we're getting via the forum and things like that. I see Patrick has asked, any updated release date still expected with 5.0 in the not too distant future? That lines up with the question I got this morning in my inbox. Basically, hey, it's April. Is Gutenberg launching this month? So there have been differing opinions on what was meant at the State of the Word when Matt Mullenweg said April. Matt Mullenweg,
unpack that for us, buddy.
Yeah. People have said that he's like, no, April, it's definitely coming out. The broader interpretation is that April is when Gutenberg would be feature complete. Now, 4.9.5 of WordPress came out at the beginning of April. 4.9.6 is not out yet, and that's going to be the greater call to action for a wider audience to test Gutenberg. So I think that it's more April. We're going to see a more feature complete version of Gutenberg. What does that mean for when 5.0 is going to come out? Some people are saying May. Some people are saying the summer. Somebody has said to me that they don't think it's going to come out until WordCamp US. I don't think it's going to be that long. But our best guess, there hasn't been an update, like an updated definite release date. I think that the release of 4.9.6 will kind of be the canary in the coal mine, right? It'll be the thing that signals to us that the WordPress team, the core development team, is confident enough to put this in front of the hands of the masses. So my best guess is still going to be June. If all goes well, it'll be like the week in June when I'm away. But that's my best guess. Zach, do you have any thoughts on that?
Hold on, let me get my mute off here. No, man, I don't. I think we've talked about this one so much, and I think you handled it well. I'm not going to add too much on that.
Cool.
Except go test your stuff, y'all. Like, you don't need to wait for it to be in core. If you have clients, if you have a site, you better get that plugin installed and staging now and be ready. When it rolls out, at first there will still be an option-ish, maybe, like you said, call to action, but they're pushing for it. So go do this. Get ready. Check out your stuff.
Yep. Kim also in the chat pointed out that June is WordCamp Europe time, so maybe June is when they reveal the Gutenberg final. That will be a really cool thing. Matt usually makes an appearance at that, so that's a really good point. Maybe June is a very good target date. So the next question is from my good friend and chopbuster Paul. He asked, post meta boxes render under the editor, but there are also properties added to the sidebar. How do you control what gets added where? This is a super developer-y question, so I'm going to turn it over to Zach.
So hold on, let me look at this question. I have access to it too. If I'm building, where am I? Was it how? Okay. Render to the editor, there are also properties added to the sidebar. How do you control what adds there? So Paul, I don't know how developer I want to get with this or what you're comfortable with, but basically within the edit setting is where you put all the edit functionality. So that's where your inspector control is going to go. And there's an actual component in WordPress called inspector control. And before, as I was saying, you used to have to do some conditional checks and say, if this block is selected, then go show inspector control. But now it's context aware. So all you have to do is import inspector control from blocks, wp.blocks, and drop it in your code and put whatever you want inside there, and it'll show up in the edit area. Now, that said, that's like technically how do I do it? I don't know if this is what you were asking, but there's also the question of when should I do it? So we have two options. We have a block with a toolbar, and we have a block with a sidebar, that inspector control. And really, like, that toolbar should, I think, personally be as minimal as possible, and really just something like a bold, link, italic, something super simple that involves the editing experience that you want super streamlined. If you're getting into more complex settings, changing colors, changing the number of default things, or even some metadata that isn't showing up but you want saved, like, that's all sidebar settings stuff. So I think keep your stuff super minimal, and by default, I probably throw settings into that inspector control is the best. So feel free to clarify if you want me to extend on that or go somewhere else with it.
Yeah, I know Paul is in the chat, so Paul, if that was a sufficient answer, let us know. If you need some more clarification, well, you can let us know that too, I suppose. All right. So we're getting a lot of questions in the live chat, which is cool. So I do want to address a couple of these that are kind of good top of the show or grouped together good questions. Is Automatic still calling it Gutenberg? There has been discussion about this. They still are calling it Gutenberg. The screenshot I saw of the call to action kind of requires them to call it Gutenberg because that's the name of the plugin that is needed to be installed. That was really good sentence structure there. So at present, yes, it's still being called Gutenberg. I suspect, or I believe, that when 5.0 comes out, it will be just called WordPress, the new WordPress editor. And then the Gutenberg name will probably, the project Gutenberg will probably change to whatever is next in the pipeline for this reimagining of WordPress as a CMS, right? So maybe the customizer will get Gutenberg-like functionality or something like that. So it'll be called Gutenberg, I'm pretty sure, right up until the moment that 5.0 comes out. And then what Gutenberg is will change, is what I'm guessing. And then the other kind of related to question that is, how are you managing your clients that need to make decisions then with no real time, right? This is, I think the purpose of this question is to say, some clients just, you can't just go ahead and install Gutenberg on and see what happens, right? There needs to be a conversation. Um, I I have some thoughts on this because I'm doing a workshop for iThemes around this called Preparing Your Clients for Gutenberg. That's happening May 8th, I think. I don't know if the page is up yet, so that might be like an exclusive breaking news thing. Um, but I just kind of sat down and put the sections together. I think that there's kind of three phases for having that conversation with clients, right? It's current clients that don't have any active work, right? Because 5.0 is coming out. You're going to have to upgrade them to 5.0 eventually because it's going to include security updates, or at least, the next dot release after 5.0 is going to have security updates. So, the conversation needs to be had with them, and you want to frame that around, hey, this big change is coming. Um, Things might break. Here are ways to make sure they don't break in the meantime, but eventually we're going to have to address this. You have new clients who are going through the proposal process, brand new projects, right? I would say add them into, like, just add Gutenberg into the price of development, right? I think at this point, you should be thinking about how to make your themes and plugins Gutenberg ready, so that your client site doesn't launch with technical debt, um, and then or launch like out of date, right? And then the I think maybe the hardest conversation to have is ongoing projects. So you have signed a contract, you have the statement of work, and now Gutenberg is coming out, and you're going to have to change or add or test some more. And that's probably going to require a change order. So again, that's a conversation that you want to have with your clients, and just let them know. Make it low pressure. Don't make it try to seem like you're trying to just like squeeze more money out of them. Just say 5.0 is coming. These are the changes that are happening. Here's how we can mitigate the changes in the meantime. But it's definitely something you're going to need to consider. And here's the benefits of doing it now versus waiting. So I'll dive more into that. In that workshop, instead of just blue skying it. But those are the types of conversations that you should be having with your clients at this point. So I don't know.
Let me jump off of that, and we're getting some ACF questions again. And so maybe, in fact, this is something Joe and I are working in tandem right now on, really exploring in depth. Do you want to mention maybe what are some scenarios for folks working with ACF currently? The mindset that, like, you don't need to convert everything into Gutenberg immediately. It might make sense to turn it off for certain types of content and on for others. Do you want to jump on that? And then I want to mention there's an update from Site Origin along page builders that is kind of a similar topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, we've talked about the classic editor, right? If your website if you're not confident that it's going to be ready when 5.0 comes out, grab the classic editor plugin and it'll turn Gutenberg off. If you think that, hey, my posts and pages are posts and pages, they're standard, they don't have a lot of meta associated to them, with them, Gutenberg is perfectly fine for those. But I have custom post types where I use ACF and I have a million different fields. How's that going to work? when talking about ACF or other third-party plugins, it's best to make sure that you're staying up to date with what the plugin developer is saying. That's first and foremost, because they're going to know best how their plugin works with Gutenberg. They're the ones that are actively developing it. However, with custom post types and ACF specifically, you need to have in the definition of the custom post type, you need to allow the REST API, right? So I forget the exact syntax of that, but I think it's like allow REST or allow API or REST API or something like that. If that's set to true, show REST. What was that?
I think it's like show and REST or something like that. I'm not completely positive.
Yeah. So if you have that set to true, the Gutenberg editor will be turned on. If you have that set to false, it'll be the classic editor. So, there's a way that you can incrementally upgrade an entire site to Gutenberg, maybe allow Gutenberg for the native WordPress post types like posts and pages. And with your custom post types, maybe do a little bit more testing and just turn show and rest off for the time being. But I think the best thing to do is stay up to date with the news coming out of whatever plugin you're looking at, like ACF. I know ACF has like a beta of 5.7. I don't know if it does any Gutenberg-y kind of things. But I know that there's a way to turn on in your theme or plugin to be able to test some newer functionality. I think it's
I just posted the link to their latest update here. They're still saying wherever Gutenberg takes us, we will follow. So the update does not look like it's hey, we converted everything over into a block, which again isn't a smart idea necessarily. Like that's not what you want is necessarily that, because you still have to update your front end templates and you might have other control mechanisms and stuff. So at first I thought, oh, they'll just convert everything into a block and you'll migrate seamlessly. What I'm thinking now is more building it in a way that won't break when it's thrown into that bottom part underneath, right? So the other thing about ACF is that sometimes you have ACF fields and you have the content. But I don't know about you, when I often build with ACF, I get rid of the content completely. So in that case, if you don't have the content, then don't try to load Gutenberg and the ACF stuff. Get rid of all of it and just have the ACF stuff. But if you have like the content and just like 2 custom meta fields or something like that, then that might make perfect sense to keep the standard flow that Gutenberg is doing. Just a thought and 2 cents there.
Yeah, that's a really good point right there. Instances where people are replacing the entire editor experience with ACF. If you're doing that, or you know somebody who's doing that, if you've inherited a site that does that, just make sure Gutenberg is turned off. There's no need for showing the content area at all if the entire page is ACF driven. And then, like Zach said, if it's only like a couple of meta fields, I think it'll be fine to appear underneath the kind of Gutenberg editor. I know that's also something that the WordPress, the Gutenberg team has control over, and they want to try to improve that UI, right? Because if you have ACF and Yoast SEO and whatever other meta boxes appearing underneath, that can cause a bit of a headache. So, there are. This is still in beta. There's still a lot of improvements that are being made, and the best thing to do is just install it on a local or a test site and get the updates. Or tune in every couple of weeks and hear us talk about the stuff that we've heard through the grapevine.
Joe, there was another great thing that was put up here, which is that is the classic editor giving people a false sense of security? Is it something where it's faking it or action and maybe using the classic editor instead of Gutenberg just for your content makes sense, but honestly, we build such complex things with WordPress, and it's not every time that you might want just Gutenberg. There might be times where you're get rid of that. I want to design everything myself and control everything. So I don't. It's necessarily a bad solution long term. I also want to transition this into talking builders. If you didn't hear the talk we had with Robbie from Beaver Builder a little while ago, also Site Origin, I'm going to drop this in right now, did something and they released a little video of them converting all of site origin over. And this is funny because I was like, I don't remember what I was doing, but I was throwing up some site somewhere, and like it was one of those themes that wanted you to bundle it with site origin page builder. And so at first I was like, oh no, I shouldn't do this. I should be getting ready for Gutenberg, but they're actually prepping. Like, let's try it. So I have the site somehow. I'll kind of keep posted on what it's like to use a page builder within Gutenberg and how that goes. So that was pretty cool because I was one of the folks that we hadn't really heard anything concrete from, and now it looks like they're definitely moving in that direction. So what that will look like for site migrations, I'm not sure, but they may be able to be like, hey, instead of using the old page builder, you just open it up now and it works right inside Gutenberg, which means you could add Gutenberg elements inside of it, vice versa. Their columns are definitely a little bit nicer. Sorry, core team, but they've had a bit more time to work on columns and rows and things. So I hope that those evolve more in Gutenberg, but I'd almost see a reason sometimes just for controlling the width and doing that stuff until the columns evolve a little bit more inside of core. So just wanted to throw that out there. I think that's some pretty cool news.
Man, that's fantastic. I'm going to have to take a look at that because it looks, based on the link that you just posted, it looks really cool. And this is perhaps the first, right? The first like page builder integration with Gutenberg that we've seen. So site origin, trailing, there it is, blazing a trail with page builders in Gutenberg. Very cool. So let's see. Oh, one more question within the live chat that's kind of related to this is the plugin is working fine, but putting it in core is a totally new test, right? That's a really good question, right? Because you know, you have a plugin, if you're merging it into core, it might have to play nicely with other things. The Gutenberg team has developed this very well so that it's really modular. They should be able to just drop it right in core and have it be working just the same as it was as a plugin. This has been their kind of standard operating procedure with major changes to WordPress since maybe you remember the plugin M6. It was a new design of the editor of the admin area. That started off as a plugin first, and then they merged it into core with little to no issues. So that's a really good question. I think that they've kind of got this process down pat as far as we're going to develop this as a plugin, and then we're going to design it in such a way that we can just drop it right into core. It's also worth stating that Gutenberg itself is, since it's a primarily React app, there's like a standalone version of it somewhere, like standalone Gutenberg without WordPress. Any of the blocks that need to connect to the WordPress database, like the image or gallery blocks, won't work, but everything else works. So they've built this pretty modularly. It's like a master class in software engineering. As far as, you know, don't repeat yourself and you know, building things to be reused and stuff like that. So that's a really good question. And it's a good point to bring up. So cool. Getting back to the previously submitted questions. Zach, this one was specifically for you. Is version 2 of your Gutenberg course available? And if I buy it, do I need to get course updates or do I have to purchase the updates separately? That's from Thomas.
Thomas, man, it's all coming free. Both Joe and I are committed to all updates for this being free. I just finished a major update. It was free for everyone. I'll do another major update probably after it rolls into core, just to cover everything or around that time once we have the final lock-in version there. Hopefully not too many changes, so hopefully won't change too much. We are both focusing on other courses, so we'll be doing an advanced Gutenberg course. We're doing a theming for Gutenberg course, and so that will not be included, right, in different content. But in terms of updates for what's there, absolutely. And I also have in my forums a content. Some folks have asked for some other example blocks, and I went ahead and threw them. So I'm trying to be as responsive and kind of do it and improve it as we go along as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to echo that, if you have purchased the course previously, for my course as well, you will have free lifetime updates. The reason that we're able to do this, I think, well, first of all, we are dedicated to the project and education and things like that. Zach and I are both educators. But as generally, what I will do is I have like these content thresholds, and I will price my course at one price today. And if I reach the next content threshold, maybe I double the amount of lessons, the course will see a price increase, right? So, one of the reasons to buy the course today, as opposed to when the next set of updates roll out, is you could see a price increase, but it won't be for you. You have locked in that price that you bought, on the day it came out, because you have those free lifetime updates. So,
Thanks, dude. That's cool.
yeah. So, cool. Very cool. The next question is from oh yeah, so this was a really good discussion that several of us had on Twitter with David Lietta. Sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly. He said Yep, cool. If I'm building a theme specifically to be Gutenberg friendly, should I even enqueue scripts and styles from the theme separate of others if there is no breakage without Gutenberg activated? So he said it a couple of times. I replaced it with the actual subject for some clarity that Brian Richards sought earlier, right? So essentially what he's asking is, should he include Gutenberg specific styles and scripts if Gutenberg is not activated? My answer to this, and again, I'll drop a link to the entire discussion because it was a discussion between David and then Zach, Brian Richards, Josh from Caldera Forums, and myself. Josh Pollock. Sorry, Josh, I blanked on your last name for a second there. And our general thoughts on this. So my thought is that if you are developing CSS that is going to go in your theme, that's going to support Gutenberg blocks, it's probably best to include all of your CSS as one style sheet. This is totally caveated, right? Because with HTTP2, they might recommend several smaller files, but all in all, the way that I would recommend you designing or building your CSS is to have some standard styles. And then if you want to target Gutenberg blocks specifically, have those as specific as required selectors. This will lighten up your CSS load a little bit. It will prevent duplication of styles, like just straight up copying styles, and it keeps all of your CSS in one place, right? So if you design your CSS that way, if you write your CSS that way, then nothing should break if Gutenberg is not enabled. So that's my 2 cents for how to kind of design or architect your theme. Zach, I know that you had some good thoughts on this too.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. So there are 2 hooks we have, right? We have a hook to plug stuff into just the editor, and we have a hook to plug stuff into the front end and the back end together. So if you are building a plugin that is a block, then you want to usually put your styles into that block assets is going to go on both the front and back end, right? So that the styling is the same. If you're building a block and stuff editor, throw them in the back end. Now, the thing about these, or throw them in the queue editor assets, whatever block editor assets, something like that. If you're building a theme, then the thing about enqueuing block assets in block assets one is that it's going to not just style your blocks on the front end, but it'll style them in the back end. Just use the normal WP&Q scripts. It's only going to go on the front end, right? So all this is the stuff you have, where do you want it? And then based off of that, I'd say then you determine, is all this just going to go into one thing that just goes on the front end, but you want to include all of your CSS through the hook that applies it to both the front end of the site and the admin area. Like that might throw some other stuff because you might be styling or in the admin area and it makes that bug. My personal opinion is still do your whole site and then throw your block CSS into a separate file if you want those styles to show up in the editor too. I know that this is a little bit extra. I mean, I think eventually I just come, if you're just doing a theme, whatever, throw it all in and queue it normally. But I would be aware of that, especially if you're trying to design themes that specifically take default blocks and give them all a whole new look. Then you definitely want to pull that out separately and make sure that it's queued on both the front and back end. So it's kind of my take on it. But it was a good conversation, and shout out to David for bringing that up.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? If you want to have admin styles, right, the correct way to do it is not just to throw your front end CSS in the admin, right? This is the same now with the classic editor. If you want to have admin styles, you should have a separate editor CSS, right? And then check to see if it's the admin area and then queue that CSS only if it is the admin area. So Zach raises a really good point. I was talking strictly about the front end, right? If you're developing CSS just for the front end for your blocks, it's best to reduce the number of requests that your user's browser needs to make without unreasonably bloating that CSS. I think that we're not here to talk about preprocessors or anything like that, but I use Sass. So the way that I would handle that is I would have a blocks Sass file, and then I would have that blocks Sass file compile two separate places, to my style.css and to the editor.css. And then I could properly enqueue. So I'm only managing it in one place. I'm still using the right specific selectors, and I'm not including all of my front-end CSS in the admin area. So I think Zach and I have just mentioned two different approaches there that are both really good things to consider. Alrighty. So let's see. So Zach, so you posted a couple of a question here about ACF versus Gutenberg. Something from Matt from Pragmatic. Do you want to kind of address that?
Well, I think we kind of talked about this topic. I will give a shout out to Pragmatic, this great UK agency that I stopped by and we did a couple-hour jam session on Gutenberg. And I really liked there. We talked about the theme when I shared that out. I'll put the link here so you can kind of see some of the topics that were on discussion. Somebody had said, "Oh, can you guys include ACF to Gutenberg in part of your course?" And I think we're both just kind of, that might be something I do. Maybe in the next update I'll have an example of that. And I think we kind of covered that topic, but I'll throw this down here for folks who want to see it. And yeah, I think we covered that topic pretty well. I don't know, maybe that should go in the course. What do you think, man? Oh, hold the mic. Sorry, is that better? You can hear me a little bit better now. Oh, you're on mute, buddy.
Hey. Yeah, I can hear you a lot better now. And the original poster retracted their message, so it sounds like everything is good there too. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because we want to try to balance. So at least when I approach my course, I want to try to balance what is a reasonable effort and adds value for my students. I added a new section to my course for essentially testing Gutenberg, and in it, I included Beaver Builder and Gravity Forms. I included those because my site, which is the test subject for this section of the course, uses Beaver Builder and Gravity Forms. So I'm probably not going to build out using like testing with site origin, just unless I have a test subject in the course. But so I'm kind of waffling on this answer. Is it totally
Actually, oh, I was just going to jump in there because I just remembered in the latest update, I do include a meta block, and I show how to. So you could, if you have an ACF block, you could just match that metadata call and pull it in. But what I do get into talking about is how kind of some potential dangers of having metadata saved in the content. So you really want to do it as a dynamic, kind of just where the server side stuff there. So I will continue to update that. But I forgot that I actually put in meta stuff into the course already. So my first suggestion is, rather than throwing metadata inside of a block where then it's saved as content, stick it in the sidebar where it can be saved otherwise, although that does kind of still get saved as a content comment. So I'll extend that with some more server-side stuff once that gets extended a little bit. But yeah, I kind of forgot about that. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. So I mean, that's a really good point, right? Like, so it goes back to, does it add value? I probably will not add ACF to my course unless like a bunch of students request it, right? That's the other thing. And then, I'd have to think about, am I hitting that content threshold? Am I reasonably adding value? Is it like too much bloat for the majority of students? I will say, if you are a plugin developer that's interested in educating your users, and you want videos made, to reach out to us and we can have that conversation. Because I think it's worth it for a certain group of users. If none of my users have ACF or use ACF, or they can figure that out on their own, I don't think it's worth it me adding 4 or 5 videos on how to use ACF with Gutenberg. So I guess the answer is, it depends on what my students want.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to some other stuff. Do we still have some other stuff in our queue, my friend?
Let's see. That looks like the last one. So we talked about ACF and Gutenberg. We addressed, I think, all of the in-chat questions. Can we save user meta via the inspector? Paul just asked that in the chat. Can we save user meta via the inspector? Is this a specific Gutenberg thing, or is this like I know that there's a plugin for it's called, I think it's called Post Meta Inspector.
Okay, the short answer is yes. Thanks to the REST API, you could figure that out. And this is actually some other stuff I wanted to mention, some questions I got in relation to kind of what's new and coming development-wise. So there is a way by default to set up your attribute as being post meta. There is not a default way to set up an attribute to be user meta yet. I don't know if that's something that is coming. If Riyad's still on the call and listening, maybe he could cue in and say if that's coming into core. I have some thoughts around this, but what I think we are going to see, and what I wanted to talk about, is they're kind of revamping how API requests are made within Gutenberg. And there is a new core data library. I'm going to throw this in here. And my apologies, because I just kind of got a download on this recently. I don't fully understand and haven't tested everything yet, but it sounds like what's going to happen is we're going to get a bunch of functions that will make API requests for us. Oh, Riyad is there. So the question, Riyad, was, is there a default way to set a attribute to be user meta instead of post meta? Or what is the best approach to saving user meta in the inside? If you want to, I'll kind of talk about it at a high level too. So yeah, REST API makes sense. I think so too. And we're going to see a bunch of really cool functions, and they're being built out in this library link too, so that you won't have to set up your API request and write all the promises. We'll just be like, get me this, get me that. And it'll be kind of baked. That feels good, like down in the belly area, that's happening. So I think that's going to be really cool. And there have been some advancements, like if you've used with API data. I think that might be less recommended for the way to approach it as a higher order component that core we won't. And I'm really excited about that involvement, because once we have really rich and easy ability to make whatever API requests and updates we want, or if we extend the REST API ourselves so that we could do more, then it's going to be, you could do pretty much whatever you want really easily, and it doesn't have to be like in the same way that an attribute is hard-coded to be post-meta. You could kind of just be like, hey, this attribute is whatever, and I'm going to update it live on my own and track those changes via the API. Now, we still get into this issue of, if all dynamic attribute in the content, do you want to be creating a dynamic block that is then served via PHP once the data is actually requested, so that it redoes that API call and gets the latest data? Because if you're hard coding data, metadata in, again, to a post, and it changes outside of it, that post is not aware. So, oh, I froze. Sorry about that. Hopefully you can still see me. Joe, am I still going okay?
Yeah, you look good to me. You look and sound good to me.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on that. I'm going to be, this is kind of the advanced Gutenberg course, right? Like getting more into the state and data and other stuff like that. But hopefully that gives, shoot, I don't know that it answers it completely, but best of my ability there, hopefully makes some sense.
Awesome. Well, with that, that is everything that we have been asked in the last several weeks and today. Thanks to everybody for attending. This was a really good, lively chat. I hope that it was useful for everybody watching now, watching later. I want to thank Give again for sponsoring these events. Check them out over at Give WP. They are fantastic. They're just so dedicated to the community. And have I mentioned this? Their plugin's free. It's a free plugin that you can get money from. So like check it out. There's no reason to not check it out, I guess is what I'm saying.
Folks, blow up a project so that you could use it. Set up donations for your own stuff. Think about where you can integrate it. Oh, wait, hold on. Dude, I just got breaking news, Joe.
Breaking news.
We are, I think, allowed to mention something called quote unquote. Yep, it looks like it. Okay, I'm going to be tenacious about this, but I won't give too many details, but I believe that we can say that a plugin coming that will let you basically test and control what you want to enable Gutenberg for and what you want to turn it off for, down to a really specific level. So hold on one sec. We won't go into details on that, but we'll just mention that this may be coming, and a great tool to help you if you want to control exactly what turns on for Gutenberg and what doesn't. And again, I don't think that's cheating, y'all. I don't think that's a bad approach, even over the next year plus to see that. So that's cool that we could squeeze that news in here. I also threw in the chat an update to the sidebar API. We don't need to talk about it too much, but that is, you got that link if you want to get super nerdy with it.
Awesome. Really good way to end this. Just like breaking news. Very cool. Thanks, Zach, for doing the legwork on that. And thanks to everybody for watching. If you have any more questions, tag Zach at ZGordon on Twitter or me at JCasabona on Twitter. Go to gutenberg.courses/ask us and ask your question. You'll also be signed up for reminders for when the next event is happening, which BT dubs, the next event is happening Wednesday, April 25th at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So that's the week after I get back from Disney World. I'm bringing my daughter there for the first time. So if I have a vacation hangover, I'm very sorry, but I'm super excited. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks to Zach for joining us from the UK this time. Thanks to Give for sponsoring. And until next time, get out there and block something or building blocks.
I love it. Happy Gutenberg.
Bye, everyone.